Barret is coming to War of the Visions Global and is getting some upgrades to go along with it. But will this make him worth pulling? Or is he still a victim of being a part of a 4-unit collaboration? Barret is a 90 cost ice unit with the main job Gunner, Final Fantasy VII Remake. He has the sub-jobs Gunner and Pugilist, and he uses guns as his weapon of choice. Barret will equip cloth and hats as his armor. So Barret has been confirmed to be getting a few upgrades to his skills. I'm going to be using the JP information, so please keep that in mind. However, I will mention the specific changes that were outlined in the 1.5 anniversary livestream. So there could be further changes that we'll discover on Wednesday, but we did actually see like the range and the height upgrade to one of his skills because he was using it on a 2 height unit and with a 4 range distance, so we do actually know some values. Barret's clothes are his TMR. They provide HP, defense, and critical avoid. Barret also gets the TP skill Fury boost from them, and this is going to increase his crit rate and his crit evasion by 30. Barret's master ability gives the typical boost to ice units and then gives himself 10% HP and 15% defense penetration. Barret's stats are underwhelming on paper. While his HP is higher than average, it's not close to tank levels. His attack is 384, which seems very low, but keep in mind that missile units generally have lower attack. However, even with this said, Barret's attack is lower than the rest of our missile attackers. His agility is very low at 57, and that's perhaps the most concerning part of his kit. He does get an innate 8 defense, but that's not enough to turn the whole thing around. If we take a look at level 115 versus 120, Barret does get 425 for going all the way to 120, otherwise he doesn't get a lot of stats. He does get a job level 25 skill that has a nice AoE and potency, and it also ignores guts, so I think that is worth acquiring. Barret is weak to fire and strong against wind damage. He has a very nice slash resist at 15% and his missile is at 10%. He has no weakness to magic or pierce, but he does have a 5% weakness to strike. Overall, it's not a bad set of resists considering that units often have more weaknesses. 0 magic resist isn't the worst starting point in the world, and 15 to slash resist is a fantastic starting point. Barret has 50% resist to slow and disable and then a 10% resist to blind. The slow and disable resists are very powerful, and honestly I'm very glad to see those there, so that's definitely a plus for him. Let's talk about Barret's kit next, and we're going to start with the passives. So Barret has 2 new passives from his new gunner job. Avalanche Soul is going to grant Barret some defense and critical evasion. The critical evasion is interesting, but it's hard for me to gauge how good it will be. It's going to pair with his TMR ability though. Prepared to carry everything gives Barret some innate hate to start a fight, but it also describes my experience grocery shopping with my wife. Concentration is going to give Barret 2 range as an upgrade, and this is pretty important if you're going to be using him as an attacker, or if you're wanting him to get off some status effects or defense breaks from a range. Missile Mastery is going to give Barret some missile attack, although I don't think that attacking is going to be his strong suit, so you might want to focus his passives in a different direction. And then we have Warrior's Spear, which is going to give Barret some more HP and some attack. I think that you would take the defense and the crit avoid from Avalanche Soul over this though. As for counters, we have Anger Counterattack, which is going to decrease the target's agility by 20%, and I think that this is actually quite strong. This is the counter that I would use if I was going to be building Barret, because he will be taking attacks as someone with innate hate, and then he can hopefully decrease the agility of anyone attacking him, making them easier to take out. I just want to remind everybody that I'm using the JP translation for all of the skill names, and they'll be different when we get them tomorrow. So Bappa is a small potency attack with a 39% attack break for the target. So this has the potential of lowering the damage that Barret's taking from physical attackers. And I mean, I've tested a break like this before the EX era, and it was translating to like, you know, a couple hundred less damage. So it's probably going to be a little bit more than that with higher attack stats now. But still, it helps, but it's not going to be a huge deal. Rootedness is upgraded to Super Root in Barret's EX job, and I believe the English name is Steelskin, so as amazing as Super Root is, we're not going to get that in the game. It gives Barret a 40% attack buff and then a 20 defense buff for 3 turns, so the defense boost is big. That's a pretty big boost. But Barret's base attack is low, so the 40% boost is solid, it's just not going to fix his low attack. Anger Max is a 3-hit chaining move. And then we have Grenade Bomb, which is a large 200% potency shot. It has a high crit chance and it decreases healing power by 60%. This is a really big hit to healing power, but that effect has become a little less important with the lack of healing in the meta right now. Still, it's a very powerful tool to have in his kit. Next we have Fuel Burst, which is upgraded to Fuel Burst Kai in Barret's EX job. This attack is going to break your opponent's defense by 30 before dealing a 165 potency attack. It also has the chance to inflict slow to the target, giving the rest of your team time to come in and bop that guy. So this is Barret's best skill. So a defense break and slow are both incredibly powerful effects, and it is confirmed that the range and the range height for this skill are being upgraded for global. Also, the AP cost is going to be reduced from 26 to 20. So this is a big deal, as currently the range is only 3 and then the range height is 1. But with range 4 and height 2, Barret is going to be able to use this skill way more often in auto, and that is going to make all the difference for him. Zero Range Shot is a big 205% potency attack that ignores any guts buffs that the opponents may have. It also has a 6 square AoE, but only in front of Barret. Luckily, Barret's innate hate is going to help bring enemies to him so that he can go ahead and use this skill. Let's talk about Barret's subjobs next. For his Gunner FF7, he's going to get Grand Blow, which is a strike-based AoE around Barret. It has a chance of immobilizing the targets, keeping them near Barret. The strike damage is also very interesting. Energy Reload is going to give Barret a massive missile attack buff, and if I understood correctly on the live stream, the buff is going to be even greater in global. It only lasts for 1 turn though, so hopefully he makes it count. When we look at the Gunner subjob, we have Aimed Fire, which is a huge skill for Barret. It gives him more range and a big missile attack buff. It also allows him to work with other missile units. So for example, Frederica and Cloud, he can buff your team to allow them to use other buffs. Leg Shot is always worth looking at because of its 2 range height, although that's now a bit different because he gets a more 2 height range skills. This is going to help Barret get shots off on a lot of maps with low AP cost, but also have that immobilize to use as well. Sidewinder is a decent AoE, and then Arm Shot has really big, it's a big potency attack, but it's also a source of disable. So the biggest problem with it is that the height difference on this skill, I believe, is 0, so it's not easy to use. Pugilist is an interesting subjob, so Barret's going to get a lot of great skills from it. He gets up most of the good Pugilist skills, so strike damage is very solid, as we know. We talked about that in the Tifa video. So Steel Body Stance and Breathing Technique can help his survivability. Steel Body Stance giving you some defense and some HP. Breathing Technique is like a battle 2 for guild battle type skill, but can do some healing. Shifting Strike is going to help him approach enemies and draw them away from your allies. And then Spirit Breaker has the potential to be a 79% attack break if Barret takes damage enough times. I don't think it's going to be that reliable though. And then Pugilistic Mastery is very welcome to see because it not only increases Barret's strike attack and defense penetration, it also gives him the ability to work in a strike team and buff his allies, like Raldor for example. I mean, probably 2B and Tifa, but still, the fact that he has the Aimed Fire and the Pugilistic Mastery buffs for these different compositions makes him a very flexible unit. Barret's Limit Burst has a big potency and it hits twice. It has a 4 square range and has a large chance to inflict confusion on the target. What can I say? Ice must be a very confusing element. This has the power to take an enemy out of a fight, so it is an interesting skill. I can see it being more useful on the manual side of play though. Let's talk about some comparisons for Barret. Compared to true hate-generating tanks, Barret has lower resists, lower innate defense, and lower HP. He's just not going to hold on for long periods like King Want, Wall, or the tank that you're going to comment about me forgetting to mention. Barret does match these tanks in terms of status effects. Slow and Confusion are both pretty powerful enfeeblements to inflict on your enemies. Barret also has access to Immobilize and Disable. In terms of a support unit, I think he could be pretty interesting in a missile or a strike team because he can provide the powerful buffs to these attack types. You can see these other units focusing on their own buffs or other team buffs, and Barret will then also work to divert your opponent's attention long enough for your carries to deal some damage, at least in theory. Let's talk about the pros and cons for Barret next. For the pros, we have Innate Hate is a very useful skill to have in autoplay for manipulating your opponents. He can support both gunner and strike teams, and his defense break is just very, very powerful, especially with the upgrades. He has some utility. He can ignore guts, he can inflict slow, he can lower healing power. But then we do have some cons. His low attack and his low agility are really hard to get around. He's just not as tanky as I would have liked to see him being, and he's going to take a lot of practice to use on auto efficiently. So if you're just looking for a plug and play unit to put on your team, he's just not going to be that unit. And now you're asking, should you pull for Barret? And I don't think that you should. His low agility and attack are just tough to deal with, and the trade-off is him being kind of a partial tank, but then not having those tank stats entirely. So I just don't think they gave him enough support on his defensive side, and his status effects, they can be acquired elsewhere. So he's another tough unit to use on auto, and I think players pulling for him are going to have to expect to take some time to learn his kit. But overall, if you like Barret, and if you like a character, then you got to pull for them, right? Barret is going to be an effective unit for a lot of players. I just can't recommend him to the general player base. That's going to be it for this video. I hope it was useful to you, and if it was, you can let me know in the comments below, or you can talk to me on Discord using the link in the description to access our Mysidia Gaming Discord. Otherwise, I'm going to see you in the next video, but before you go, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.